Welcome to part 2 of this section, where I'm actually going to show you an introduction now and how it looks in its structure from what I spoke about in part 1. Now you can see these 5 areas which I spoke about from part 1. I've color coded that and I'm going to put that into the sections below. My paper is about mental fatigue in football. Don't worry too much about that, but hopefully you'll learn the actual structure of the introduction here. Now starting off with part 1, definition, context, the first thing that you need. What I'd say before going into that is these subheadings here, I recommend you use them when you're doing your draft. You obviously won't put them into your final version when you submit, but use it in your draft, make sure you stay on track with what you should be doing. Okay, let's get into it though. So the definition, I've got one here. I'll speak about physical loading, brackets, well, what is that? And I've got a reference here, well both of them really, but I've highlighted this one, and that's backing up what I'm saying. So definition, reference. Context, I don't want you to read the whole paragraphs. If you are keen, pause and read it. In terms of context, this could be the first bit. So I'm starting off quite broadly. Research investigating fatigue, not mental fatigue, just purely fatigue, has been looked at in different ways. But a different way of looking at it is mental fatigue. Got references there to back it up. More context here. Well, in football, players make a lot of decisions. This requires vigilance, making lots of decisions, taking lots of information, and this could contribute to mental fatigue. You can see how many references I've got here. That's the context. So I've defined what I mean by physical loading, which is relevant to what I'm talking about, and then I would branch out and speak about different areas. Now, I've introduced mental fatigue, so now I'm going to speak about it in the second area, which is the prior research. Okay, so I don't want you to read all of this again, but you'll have a sentence that may start like this. Previous research has demonstrated, and then I go into the methodology quickly of the study that I'm talking about. So 30-minute task, and it compared elite athletes to non-elite athletes. Okay, reference goes in at the end. Mix up where your references go. Sometimes you can have the reference at the start of the sentence, sometimes the end. Mix it up. Don't always put it in the same place. And you'll see here, actually, it's a bit cheeky. I've put 6 references into one paper there. I know I mentioned speak about 4 or 5. This is one of the main ones I speak about, but I have chucked quite a few in here where I say, well, here's a review and you can read more about it there. I'm going to move on now. In terms of getting higher grades, I spoke about the need to speak about the methodology and what's wrong with it in the current research, what needs to change. I do that here. So I speak about the methodology of mental fatigue. Again, don't worry about what that is, but just think about your own study. What are the limitations? I've backed it up with 2 references. You want to do the same. Have 1 or 2 references that back up the things that you're talking about. Now I do go on to speak about more research here, so I've got plenty of references where I speak about the previous research. But again, I don't want to waste time and speak about every single one. I'll move on now to the research gaps. So just focus on the bits that are in purple. You'll have a short paragraph like this as well, where you'll say something along the lines of, although this research I've spoken about has done this, or shown this, look at it from a different angle. Well, actually, this is wrong with it. So, this has shown this, but, well, this needs to be changed. So speak about what needs to change, what's missing, what the gap is, and even better, if you can put a reference in to back it up, like I have here, it's not just my crazy opinion. I'm also saying, well, Carling et al., they're saying this as well. They're saying this is a problem. It sounds much stronger. You'll get a higher grade if you can mix up your opinion on what needs to be changed, but it's also backed by science. Okay, so that's the gaps. And then you'll see here the aim. So I've highlighted bits of it in the first sentence or 2, but you can fill in the blanks yourself for your study. So finish off by saying, well, if we can understand whatever it is, well, this can help future research or help future practice by changing this. Now, I used a survey, and I'm going to speak about why this is a good idea. Surveys have never been used in my line of work before this paper, so I need to back up why I'm doing it. If it's never been done before and I say, well, let's just do that, okay, it's not bad, but you get a higher grade if you can say why it's a good idea. So I've shown here, I've got a reference. If you use online surveys, well, they're actually quite good in sports science. They bridge the gap between research and practice. And this is my opinion, okay, but again, I've mixed an opinion with a reference. Surveys are quick and easy. Here, you'll finish off the last bit, you'll say the purpose of the study. So, what is the purpose of your study? Speak about that. As you can remember in part 1, I said keep it really brief. Look at this, it's 2.5 lines. You don't need to go into great detail and give all the methodology of what you're planning to do. Now, I don't have a hypothesis here. That's okay, you don't always need one. If your dissertation, you probably do. But if you're doing more like a lab report, you can put one in, speak to your lecturer, make sure they're happy. Doesn't really matter what I think at that point, it's what the lecturer wants. Okay, so that's an introduction. What I recommend you do is rewind this. For certain parts you got a bit lost, because academic writing is one of the harder videos I do to try and explain, because it is that bit more complex compared to my usual content. I'd also recommend that you send drafts to your lecturer. So I can tell you how to write one, but you still have to go and write your own from scratch. Make sure your lecturer is happy with what you're doing. So get those basic elements right. And finally, read papers. If you watch part 1 and 2 a couple of times, then go and read a couple of papers and hopefully it'll sink in a little bit more by what I mean. These videos alone aren't enough. You've got to go and read some papers. Okay, I'll leave it there. If you have any questions, please speak to me on Instagram at Sports Science Hacks and we can go through this in a little bit more detail. Okay, thanks for tuning in and I'll speak to you again soon.